My name is Naomi. I'm 33. 2 hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle at the Belmonte Grand Ballroom on Saturday, June 8th at 4:47 p.m., I was standing in the bridal suite bathroom, listening to my future mother-in-law Beatrice tell my mother she didn't belong at table 1. "The seating chart is final, Margaret," Beatrice said through the door. Her voice had that smooth, practiced cruelty she'd perfected over 3 decades of country club luncheons. "Table 14 is perfectly adequate. It's near the kitchen, yes, but the waitstaff are very discreet." My mother's voice cracked. "But Naomi said family would be at the front tables. We drove 9 hours from—" "You're not really family yet, are you? Not until the vows." Beatrice's heels clicked away. "Besides, Preston's colleagues from the firm need those seats. Important people, you understand." I pressed my forehead against the marble countertop. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the edge to steady them. Through the gap under the door, I could see my mother's sensible flats. The ones she'd polished 3 times because she wanted to look nice for my wedding, standing perfectly still on the Persian rug. "Mom?" I opened the door. Her eyes were red but dry. She'd learned a long time ago not to cry in front of people like Beatrice. "It's fine, sweetheart." She touched my veil, adjusted a pin. "Table 14 is fine. I just want to see you happy." That's when I heard Preston's voice in the hallway, low and urgent. "Mother, did you handle it?" "Of course, darling. Her parents won't make a scene. They're too simple for that." Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. Let me take you back 18 months, to a December night when I thought I'd met the man I'd been waiting for my whole life. Preston Carmichael walked into the Rosewood restaurant at exactly 7:32 p.m., 22 minutes late, and didn't apologize. He ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. He talked about his family's investment firm for 45 minutes straight. And I sat there, smiling, because my business partner Kesha had spent 3 weeks convincing me to try this blind date setup, and I was tired of going home to an empty penthouse after 16-hour days building titanium capital from nothing. "So what do you do?" Preston finally asked, halfway through his second scotch. This was always the moment I had to decide how much to reveal. "I work in finance," I said. True. "Processing paperwork mostly, really boring desk stuff at a small company downtown." Also true, technically. I did process paperwork. Acquisition contracts for distressed assets. Purchase agreements for toxic debt portfolios. Just happened to be my own company, with my signature at the bottom as founder and CEO. Preston's interest dimmed immediately. Perfect. "Oh, well, we can't all have exciting careers." He smiled, and I made myself smile back. "But I bet you're good at it. The boring stuff requires patience." I'd started Titanium Capital at 25 with $180,000 I'd saved working 3 jobs through college and grad school. By 33, I'd built it into a multi-million-dollar private equity firm specializing in acquiring toxic debt and converting it into performing assets. We had 11 employees. Our LLC, Apex Horizon Holdings, had corporate records spanning 7 states. But nobody knew. Not my parents, not my college friends, not the man sitting across from me deciding whether I was worth a second date. Because I'd learned at 14, watching my father lose everything to a business partner who smiled at Sunday dinners while forging documents, that the only safe wealth is invisible wealth. Preston called 3 days later. We dated for 4 months before he proposed at his mother's spring garden party in front of 80 witnesses, with his grandmother's ring. I said yes because I thought maybe, finally, I could build something that wasn't just balance sheets and acquisition strategies. Something warm, something real. I was wrong. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in March, 3 weeks after I'd moved my personal belongings into Preston's brownstone on Asherton Avenue. I kept my penthouse, the one I'd bought under an LLC, the one nobody knew about, as my office space. Told Preston I sometimes worked late and needed a place to crash downtown. I came home from a meeting at 11:16 p.m. to find Beatrice sitting in my living room. Not Preston's living room, ours. With a key I hadn't given her. Naomi, darling, she didn't stand. We need to discuss your financial contribution to the wedding. I'm sorry? I set down my bag carefully. Preston and I already discussed splitting. Yes, well, Preston's been too generous. The Carmichael family has a certain standard to maintain. She pulled out a folder. I've taken the liberty of reviewing your financial situation. That little finance job of yours pays, what, 42,000 a year? 47,000, actually. That's what I reported to the IRS as my salary from the small finance company where I supposedly worked. My actual compensation package, hidden through various corporate structures, was substantially higher. Something like that, I said. Then you'll understand why we're asking you to contribute 35,000 toward the wedding expenses. Preston shouldn't bear the entire burden, and his father and I have already committed 180,000. It's only fair you match his investment, proportionally speaking. My stomach dropped. $35,000. Nearly my entire annual salary, which meant if I paid it, I'd have to explain where the money came from. I'll need time to. The deposit for the Belmonte is due Friday. 3 days. Beatrice stood, smoothing her skirt. I'm sure you can borrow from your parents if needed. They seemed quite resourceful when we met them. The way she said resourceful made it sound like an insult. I paid the 35,000, transferred it from my personal account, the visible one, and told Preston I'd been saving for years. He kissed my forehead and called me responsible. His mother smiled and said nothing. Then, 2 weeks later, I discovered the joint account we'd opened for household expenses was missing $50,000. I found out at 6:51 a.m. on a Thursday, checking my phone before my morning run. Transaction dated 3 days prior. Wire transfer to an offshore account I didn't recognize, authorized by Preston Carmichael. No notification, no discussion. I made coffee with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, waited until Preston came downstairs at 8:15, already dressed for the office. Preston, did you wire 50,000 from our joint account? He barely looked up from his phone. Mother needed it for the reception venue. They required an additional deposit. You didn't ask me. It's a joint account, Naomi. I don't need permission. He grabbed his briefcase. Besides, I assumed you'd want the wedding to be perfect, unless you'd prefer we downgrade to something more budget-friendly? That word. Budget-friendly. The way Beatrice said resourceful. I would have preferred you asked. I'll remember that next time. He kissed my cheek. His lips were cold. Don't forget, dinner with Mother and Donovan tonight, 7 sharp. Don't be late like last time. I hadn't been late last time. I'd arrived at 7:02 because of traffic. Beatrice had made me apologize to the entire table. That night at dinner, Donovan, Preston's younger brother, barely acknowledged me. He worked at the family firm, same as Preston, though everyone knew Preston was the golden child. Donovan was 31, unmarried, and bitter about it. So Naomi, Beatrice said over the appetizer course, Preston mentioned you've been working late quite a bit. Trouble at that little company of yours? Just busy season, I said. Well, once you're married, you might consider something less demanding. Preston will need a wife who's available for entertaining. His career is at a critical juncture. Preston said nothing, just cut his steak and nodded along. I excused myself to the bathroom at 8:47 p.m. and spent 6 minutes staring at my reflection in the mirror, watching my face burn hot enough that I could feel my pulse in my teeth. When I came back, they were talking about the prenup. Absolutely necessary, Beatrice was saying. I've already had our attorney draft something. Very standard. Just protects the family assets in case of, well, unforeseen circumstances. Preston looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening. Mother, we haven't discussed. You're discussing it now. She slid a manila envelope across the table. To me, not to Preston. Read it over. Sign by next week. The wedding's in 3 months. We can't delay the legal formalities. I opened it right there, skimmed past the standard language about separate property and commingled assets. Got to page 7. Clause 14. In the event of dissolution of marriage, Party B, Naomi Chen, agrees to waive all claims to Party A's, Preston Carmichael, current and future business interests, including but not limited to shares in Carmichael and Sons Investment Group, personal investment portfolios, and family trust distributions. Fine. Expected. Clause 19. Party B acknowledges no financial contribution to the marital estate beyond household income and agrees that Party A's premarital assets shall remain separate property in perpetuity. Also fine. Clause 23. Party B agrees to indemnify and hold harmless Party A and the Carmichael family from any debts, liabilities, or financial obligations incurred in Party B's name prior to or during the marriage. I read it again and again. This says I'm responsible for any debts in my name, even if I didn't incur them. Standard language, Beatrice said smoothly. Unless you're planning to rack up credit card bills? No, but… Then it shouldn't be a problem. Sign it, darling. Preston's attorney is waiting. I didn't sign it that night. Or the next week. I took it to my own attorney, one Beatrice didn't know about, who highlighted Clause 23 and said 4 words. Don't sign this, ever. But Preston kept pushing, gently at first, then less gently. Mother's getting anxious, Naomi. The wedding's in 6 weeks. I just want my lawyer to review… Your lawyer? His voice went cold. Since when do you have a lawyer? Since I founded a multi-million-dollar company, I thought. But said, everyone should have legal representation before signing a prenup. We didn't speak for 2 days. Then, on a Monday in late April, I got a call at 2:34 p.m. from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Chen, this is Derek Fontaine from Sterling Credit Union. We're calling about your application for a $15 million bridge loan. We just need to verify a few details before final approval. My hands went numb. I didn't apply for any loan. Pause. Our records show an application submitted April 19th with your signature as guarantor for Carmichael and Sons Investment Group. The loan is to cover temporary liquidity issues while the firm restructures several underperforming portfolios. April 19th, 5 days ago. I was in Seattle that day, closing an acquisition deal for Titanium Capital. Alone. In meetings from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., with timestamps on every contract. Someone forged my signature. Another pause. Longer this time. Ms. Chen, I'm going to need you to come to our office. Today, if possible. I was there by 4 p.m. The loan officer showed me the documents, my signature, my social security number, my employment information, listing me as financial associate at Carmichael and Sons Investment Group with an annual income of $250,000. I don't work there, I said. My voice sounded far away. I've never worked there. But you are engaged to Preston Carmichael, correct? Son of the managing partner? Yes. And this is your signature? He pointed to the guarantor line. It looked like my signature, the capital N with the extended tail, the way I crossed my T's. But I'd been in Seattle. I had plane tickets, hotel receipts, meeting notes time-stamped and signed by 4 different executives. No, I said, it's not. I filed a police report that evening at 6:22 p.m. The detective took notes, looked bored, told me it was probably a misunderstanding. Family businesses get complicated. Maybe Preston added me as a guarantor for tax purposes and forgot to mention it. He forged my signature on a $15 million loan application, I said. That's fraud. It's also your fiancé. These things usually work themselves out internally. He closed his notebook. But we'll investigate. Give it a few days. I drove straight to Preston's brownstone, let myself in with my key, found him in the study with Donovan and Beatrice, all 3 huddled over a laptop. They looked up when I walked in, guilty, Caught. Naomi, Preston stood. You're early. $15 million, Preston. You put my name on a $15 million loan. Beatrice closed the laptop. How dramatic. It's just a formality, darling. We needed someone with excellent credit to co-sign while the firm handles a temporary cash flow situation. Your credit score is pristine. It would have been wasteful not to use it. You forged my signature. Forged is such an ugly word. She stood, walked toward me. We simply facilitated a process that benefits everyone. Once Preston and you are married, his debts are your debts anyway. This just expedites the timeline. My throat went dry. We're not married yet. No, she agreed. But you will be. In 5 weeks. And then all of this becomes moot. Unless… She tilted her head. Unless you're planning to cancel the wedding over a minor administrative detail. I looked at Preston, waiting for him to say something. Anything. Tell his mother she'd crossed a line. Apologize. Admit what they'd done. He looked at the floor. I'm calling my lawyer, I said. Oh, Naomi. Beatrice laughed. It sounded like ice cracking. Don't threaten us with lawyers. We have 12 attorneys on retainer. They'll bury you in motions and depositions until you're spending every penny of that sad little salary on legal fees, and by the time it's over, your credit will be destroyed anyway, because guess what? Your name is already on that loan. It's been processed, approved, the money's been distributed. The room tilted. You can't… We already did, 3 hours ago. The funds cleared at 1:47 p.m. You're officially guarantor on $15 million of corporate debt. Congratulations. I sat down. Had to. My legs wouldn't hold me. Why? It came out as a whisper. Beatrice crouched in front of me, almost gentle. Because Preston's father made some unfortunate investment decisions last quarter. Because the firm is hemorrhaging money and needs an influx of capital to avoid bankruptcy. Because your credit score is 847 and you've never carried debt in your life, which makes you the perfect guarantor. She patted my knee. And because in 5 weeks you'll be family and family helps family, you'll understand eventually. I understood perfectly. They'd researched me, found my credit history, discovered I had no debt, no liens, no red flags, saw an opportunity, took it, and now I was liable for $15 million I'd never seen, for a company I didn't work for, to save people who'd never once asked me how I was doing. I went home that night, to my penthouse, the one I'd bought with money I'd earned building something real, and sat on the floor of my empty living room for 43 minutes. Just sat there, breathing, counting the seconds between inhales. At 11:08 p.m., my phone rang. Preston. Naomi, let's talk about this rationally. You committed fraud. I facilitated a business transaction. There's a difference. Not legally. He sighed. Look, I didn't want to do this, but Mother insisted, and she's right. Once we're married, it doesn't matter whose name is on what. We're a unit. Your assets are my assets. My debts are your debts. This just accelerated the process. I haven't signed the prenup. Long silence. You're going to, he said finally. Because if you don't, and you try to back out of this wedding, I'll make sure everyone knows you're the one who destroyed this family. I'll tell them you're unstable, that you made wild accusations, that you tried to extort money from us by threatening to cancel unless we paid you off. My hands started shaking again. That's a lie. Prove it. You think anyone will believe your version over ours? We're the Carmichaels. My father sits on 4 corporate boards. My mother chairs the museum benefit committee. Donovan and I manage $200 million in client assets. And you're, what, a file clerk at some no-name finance company nobody's ever heard of? Something clicked in that moment. Something cold and clear. You're right, I said. I am. Good. Then we understand each other. Sign the prenup. Smile at the wedding. Play your part. And in a few years, once the firm's back on solid ground, we can quietly divorce, and you can go back to your boring little life. Mother's already planning the exit strategy. She is? Of course. You think this is forever? Naomi, you're a placeholder, a credit score with a pulse. But you're not stupid, and you're not difficult, which makes you useful. For now. He hung up. I sat there holding my phone, watching the screen go dark, and realized I'd just heard the truth for the first time since December. Not the truth Preston wanted me to believe. The truth he believed about himself. I wasn't his fiancée. I was a financial instrument. The next morning, I went to work, my real work. Walked into Titanium Capital's offices on the 14th floor of the Riverside building at 7:02 a.m., made myself a cup of coffee in the kitchen we'd built last year, and sat in my office with the view of the harbor I'd earned one acquisition at a time. My business partner, Kesha, knocked on the door at 7:45. "You look like hell," she said. "They forged my signature on a $15 million loan." She blinked. "Say that again slower." I told her everything. The joint account, the prenup, the loan, Preston's phone call. By the end, Keisha was pacing my office like a trapped animal. "We destroy them," she said. "We liquidate every asset they have. We buy their debt, call it due, and watch them scramble. Naomi, we literally specialize in this. Acquiring toxic debt, that's our business model. We can bury them." "They don't know about titanium," I said quietly. She stopped pacing. "What?" "Preston thinks I'm a file clerk. His family thinks I make $47,000 a year. Nobody knows about this." I gestured at the office. The company, the empire I'd built in silence. So? So if they don't know I have resources, they'll keep making mistakes. They'll get sloppy. And when they do, I met her eyes. "I want evidence." "Want?" "Everything. Documented, time-stamped, irrefutable." Keisha sat down slowly. "You're going through with the wedding." "No." I pulled out my phone, opened my recordings app. "I'm going to let them think I am, and I'm going to document every single thing they do between now and then. Every threat, every forged document, every piece of fraud. And then, when I have enough to bury them legally, I'll decide what to do with it." This is dangerous, Naomi. Everything worth doing is. For the next 4 weeks, I played my part. I signed the prenup, after my attorney added an addendum that nullified it entirely if any party was found guilty of fraud, which Preston's lawyer somehow missed during review. I smiled at dress fittings. I approved floral arrangements. I pretended to be the grateful, slightly overwhelmed file clerk marrying up into old money. And I recorded everything. Preston's admission that the firm was temporarily insolvent and needed my credit, recorded on April 29th at 8:14 p.m. Beatrice explaining how they'd forge additional documents if needed to protect the family, recorded on May 3rd at 2:37 p.m. Donovan laughing about how stupid I was for not reading the fine print on the loan, recorded on May 11th at 6:52 p.m. I kept working at Titanium, kept closing deals, kept building. But I also kept pretending to be someone smaller, quieter, easier to manipulate. At night, I'd go back to Preston's brownstone and sleep in the guest room. We'd stopped sharing a bed after the loan revelation, and I'd lie there thinking about my father, how he'd trusted the wrong person, how he'd lost everything because he believed friendship mattered more than documentation. I'd learned. I'd documented everything. 10 days before the wedding, Beatrice called me into her office at the Carmichael and Sons building. I'd never been there before. Have a critical investor meeting in Singapore the week after the wedding. They'll need to leave Sunday morning, you understand. I nodded. So we'll postpone. Oh no, you'll still go. We've booked you a lovely resort in the Maldives, very romantic. You'll just go alone. She smiled. Think of it as a pre-divorce vacation. Get it out of your system. Something in her voice made me pay attention. What do you mean, pre-divorce? Well, we've been discussing the timeline. Once the firm stabilizes, probably 18 months, 2 years maximum, there's really no reason to continue the marriage, is there? Preston will have established credit under the joint filing, the loan will be refinanced under the corporate umbrella, and you'll be free to go back to your simple little life. Preston agreed to this? Preston does what's best for the family, as will you. I recorded every word. That night, I met Keisha at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Titanium's office, handed her a flash drive with every recording, every document, every piece of evidence I'd collected. If something happens to me, don't talk like that. If something happens, you know what to do with this. You know who to contact. The SEC, the state attorney, the fraud division. She put the flash drive in her purse. You're really going to the wedding? I'm going to give them exactly what they're expecting. A quiet, intimidated file clerk who'll sign whatever they put in front of her. I finished my coffee. It had gone cold. Right up until I don't. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. Lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Preston snoring in the master bedroom down the hall. At 2:47 a.m., I got up and went to my penthouse. Sat in the living room I'd furnished myself with money I'd earned myself. Looked at the city lights, thought about walking away from all of it, canceling the wedding, disappearing, starting over somewhere new. But that's what they wanted, wasn't it? For me to run, to be small, to accept that people like them could do things like this to people like me, and the only option was to take it or leave. I wasn't going to give them that. At 6:18 a.m., I went back to Preston's brownstone, got dressed in jeans and a sweater, made coffee, waited. Preston came down at 8 o'clock. Big day, he said. Didn't look at me. Yes. Mother wants you at the venue by noon. Hair and makeup at 1. Okay. Naomi. He actually met my eyes for once. I know this isn't what you expected. The marriage, the circumstances, but it doesn't have to be awful. We can make it work. Just don't make waves and everything will be fine. What if I want waves? I asked quietly. He laughed, actually laughed. Then you'll drown. We both know that. I showed up at the Belmonte Grand Ballroom at 11:47 a.m., 13 minutes early. Beatrice was already there, directing staff like a general deploying troops. Naomi, good. Hair and makeup is in the bridal suite. Don't let them do anything too dramatic. Preston prefers subtle. I went upstairs, let them curl my hair, paint my face, zip me into a dress that cost more than my parents' car. The whole time, I kept my phone recording in my purse. At 3:30 p.m., my mother arrived, saw the room full of flowers and champagne and string quartets warming up in the ballroom below, started crying. Oh, honey, it's so beautiful. Where's Dad? Parking the car. The valet said it was full, so he had to use the garage across the street. She touched my veil. I can't believe my baby's getting married. That's when Beatrice walked in with her seating chart. Margaret, darling, we need to discuss your table assignment. My mother's smile faltered. Oh, I assumed we'd be at the family table. Naomi mentioned change of plans. Beatrice held up the chart like evidence in a trial. Preston's business associates need the front tables. You understand. Optics matter. We've placed you at table 14. It's near the kitchen, but the service will be excellent. I watched my mother's face try to hide the hurt. Watched her swallow. Nod. Accept. Table 14 is fine. Perfect. Beatrice turned to me. Be ready in 45 minutes. Don't be late. 300 guests are waiting. She left. My mother adjusted my veil again, hands shaking. Mom, you're sitting at table 1. I don't care what she... Sweetheart, don't make a scene. Not today. It's your wedding day. She kissed my forehead. I just want you to be happy. That's when I heard Preston and Beatrice in the hallway. When I heard everything that came after. I stood in that bathroom for 6 minutes and 42 seconds, listening to them discuss my parents like they were party favors to be shuffled around. Listening to Preston agree with every word his mother said. At 4:31 p.m., I walked out of that bathroom, found Keisha waiting in the hallway. She'd been invited as my coworker from the finance company, never knowing she was actually my business partner and the person who'd helped me build everything. "Are you okay?" she asked. I handed her my phone, still recording. "I need you to do something for me. Anything. In exactly 23 minutes, I'm going to walk down that aisle, and I'm going to get to the altar, and then I'm going to stop." Her eyes went wide. "Naomi, I need you to have this ready." I pulled the flash drive from my bra, the one with every recording, every document, every piece of evidence. "When I give you the signal, I need you to play track 17 through the sound system. Can you do that?" She looked at the flash drive. At me, at the ballroom below where 300 people were starting to take their seats. "What's on track 17? Preston explaining that I'm a placeholder, a credit score with a pulse, that this marriage was always meant to be temporary. Keisha's hand closed around the flash drive. "I'll have it ready." At 4:47 p.m., the wedding coordinator knocked on the bridal suite door. "It's time." I picked up my bouquet. White roses. Beatrice had chosen them because they photographed well. Walked downstairs. Saw my father waiting at the entrance to the ballroom. He was wearing the suit he'd bought specifically for this day. The one he couldn't really afford but bought anyway because he wanted to look dignified. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." His voice cracked. "Dad, I need you to trust me, okay? No matter what happens in the next few minutes, I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing." He looked confused but nodded. "Always." The music started. Pachelbel's Canon. The doors opened. 300 people stood up. I could see table 1 at the front. Preston's business associates, his father's golf buddies, Beatrice's museum committee friends. I could see table 14 in the back, near the kitchen service doors. My parents' names on 2 place cards next to people I'd never met. I could see Preston at the altar in his custom tuxedo, smiling like this was the happiest day of his life. I walked down that aisle holding my father's arm. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Got to the altar. Preston reached for my hand. I pulled away, turned to face the 300 guests. "I need to say something before we go any further." Preston's smile froze. "Naomi, what are you—" "My name is Naomi Chen. I'm 33 years old, and I'm not who you think I am." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Most of you know me as Preston's fiancée, the quiet file clerk from the boring finance company, the woman who's marrying into the Carmichael family and should feel grateful for the opportunity. I looked at Beatrice. She'd gone pale. "But that's not the whole truth." "Naomi." Preston grabbed my arm. "Stop this right now." I pulled free, kept talking. "For the past 8 years, I've been building a company called Titanium Capital. We're a private equity firm specializing in distressed asset acquisition. We manage $47 million in active portfolios. We have 11 employees and corporate registrations in 7 states." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Preston looked like I'd slapped him. "The reason I'm telling you this now is because 4 weeks ago, the Carmichael family committed identity theft and wire fraud by forging my signature on a $15 million loan application. They did this because their investment firm is hemorrhaging money, and they needed someone with excellent credit to guarantee their debts." Beatrice stood up. "This is insane. Preston, your fiancé is clearly having some kind of breakdown." "I have documentation." I pulled the envelope from my bouquet, held it up. Loan applications with forged signatures, wire transfers from our joint account without authorization. Recordings of Preston admitting this marriage was always meant to be temporary, that I'm a placeholder until the firm stabilizes and they can divorce me. The room erupted. Preston lunged for the envelope. I stepped back. "Keisha, track 17, please." The wedding music cut off. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then Preston's voice filled the ballroom through every speaker. "You're right. I am. A credit score with a pulse. But you're not stupid, and you're not difficult, which makes you useful. For now. His own words. His own voice. Recorded on my phone. Played for 300 witnesses. Preston's face went from red to white to gray. Beatrice sank back into her chair. You think this is forever? Naomi, you're a placeholder. A credit score with a pulse. The recording kept playing. Preston tried to rush the sound booth. Two of my Titanium Capital employees, who'd been invited as my friends from work, blocked him. Once the firm stabilizes, probably 18 months, 2 years maximum, there's really no reason to continue the marriage, is there? That was Beatrice's voice now. The recording from her office, explaining the exit strategy. Preston will have established credit under the joint filing. The loan will be refinanced under the corporate umbrella, and you'll be free to go back to your simple little life. Someone in the crowd gasped. I saw Preston's father stand up, face purple with rage. Not at his son. At me. The recording ended. I looked at Preston. I'm not marrying you. I'm not guaranteeing your debts. And I'm not going quietly. You can't prove any of this, he said. His voice was shaking. You recorded me without consent. That's illegal. Actually, I said, Massachusetts is a one-party consent state, which means as long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, in this case, me, it's perfectly legal and admissible in court. I pulled out my phone, held it up so everyone could see. I've been documenting everything for 4 weeks. Every conversation, every threat, every forged document, every piece of fraud. And I've already filed a formal complaint with the state attorney's office, the SEC, and the fraud division of the FBI. Beatrice made a sound like air leaving a balloon. The $15 million loan you put in my name? I had it frozen yesterday. Sterling Credit Union is currently investigating the forged documents. The wire transfer from our joint account? Also reported. The bank's launching an internal review. I looked at Donovan, who'd been silent this whole time. And the corporate records showing systemic financial misconduct at Carmichael and Sons? I sent those to your largest clients this morning. Preston grabbed my shoulders. You're destroying my family. No, I said calmly. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. I turned to the guests. 300 people staring at me like I'd sprouted wings. I apologize for ruining what should have been a beautiful celebration, but I couldn't marry someone who sees me as a financial instrument. I couldn't build a life with people who think kindness is weakness and honesty is optional. I took off the engagement ring, set it on the altar next to my bouquet. This wedding is canceled, the reception will continue, Beatrice paid for it, and it would be a shame to waste the food, but I won't be attending. I walked back down the aisle, same path I'd walked 7 minutes earlier, except this time I wasn't holding anyone's arm. This time, I was alone. My mother stood as I passed table 14. Naomi. Come on, Mom. Dad, we're leaving. They followed me. Didn't ask questions. Just followed. We got to the parking garage at 5:03 p.m. My father's old sedan was parked between a Mercedes and a Lexus. We climbed in. Where are we going? My mother asked. My place. My actual place. The penthouse I bought 3 years ago, with money I earned building something real. My father started the engine, pulled out of the garage, drove past the Belmonte Grand Ballroom, where 300 guests were probably still standing in shocked silence. Are you okay? He asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I said. I think I am. We drove through the city in silence, past the buildings where I'd closed my first deals, past the coffee shop where Keisha and I used to plan strategy sessions at midnight, past the bank where I'd deposited my first check as CEO of my own company. When we got to my building, the doorman greeted me by name. Miss Chen, welcome home. My parents looked at each other, at the marble lobby, at the concierge desk and the private elevators. How long have you lived here? My mother asked quietly. 3 years. And you never told us? I learned from Dad, remember? I hit the elevator button for the 23rd floor. You taught me that visible wealth is vulnerable wealth, that the only thing you can truly protect is what nobody knows you have. My father's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted you to learn that lesson. I'm glad I did. It saved me. We spent that evening on my balcony, watching the sun set over the harbor. I told them everything about titanium capital, about the acquisitions and the corporate structures, and the money I'd made buying debt nobody else wanted and turning it into performing assets. About Preston and Beatrice and the loan and the recordings and the plan I'd spent 4 weeks executing. What happens now? My mother asked. Now? I pulled out my phone, checked the news alerts that had been pinging for the last hour. Now the SEC investigates Carmichael and Sons for fraud. Sterling Credit Union prosecutes the forged loan documents, and Preston, Beatrice, and Donovan explain to 300 witnesses why they thought they could get away with it. Will you be okay, legally? I have 12 attorneys on retainer. I smiled, remembering Beatrice's threat. Turns out, I can afford lawyers too. My father laughed. Actually laughed. First time I'd heard him laugh like that in years. 3 days later, I got a call from Sterling Credit Union. The loan had been canceled. The forged documents had been turned over to prosecutors. My credit was clear. 1 week later, Carmichael and Sons filed for bankruptcy. Their largest clients had withdrawn their portfolios after receiving my documentation of financial misconduct. Preston's father resigned from all 4 corporate boards. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from Preston, handwritten, no signature at the bottom. It said, "I'm sorry, I didn't think you were capable of this. I should have known better." I burned it in my kitchen sink, watched the paper curl and blacken and disappear. 6 months later, I was standing in Titanium Capital's conference room, watching Keisha present our quarterly earnings to our investment board. We'd had our best quarter ever. 49 million in active portfolios, 13 employees, expansion plans into 3 new markets. After the meeting, Kesha pulled me aside. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's personal." I walked to my office, found my mother sitting in the waiting area holding a small box. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, honey." She stood, handed me the box. "I just wanted to give you this. It belonged to your grandmother." I opened it. Inside was a simple gold bracelet with an inscription. "Silence isn't safety. It's just silence." She left it for you in her will, said to give it to you when you were ready to understand what it meant. I put it on. It fit perfectly. "She would have been proud of you," my mother said. "What you built, what you protected, how you stood up for yourself. I should have told you sooner. About the company, about everything. You told us when it mattered." She kissed my cheek. "That's enough." After she left, I stood at my office window looking out at the city, at the buildings where I'd made my first deals, at the harbor where I'd watched the sunset on my worst days and best days both. I thought about Preston and his family, about how they'd seen me as something small and manageable and useful, about how wrong they'd been. My phone buzzed. Email from my attorney. Subject line, "Final settlement." I opened it, read the terms. Preston had agreed to pay restitution for the wire fraud. $50,000 plus interest. Beatrice had been removed from 3 charity boards. Donovan had been fired from what was left of Carmichael and Sons. I could pursue additional charges if I wanted. Criminal prosecution, civil suits. I had enough evidence to destroy what was left of their reputations entirely. I closed the email, didn't respond. Some things weren't worth the energy. Some fights weren't worth winning twice. I went home that night to my penthouse, made dinner, sat on my balcony watching the lights come on across the city. And I thought about the person I'd been 18 months ago. The one who'd walked into Rosewood Restaurant and pretended to be someone smaller because it seemed safer. She was gone, had been gone since the moment I'd walked down that aisle and stopped at the altar and decided that truth mattered more than comfort. If you're watching this, I want you to understand something. Silence isn't safety. Silence is what someone else needs so they can keep using you. The day you find your voice, the real one, not the one you've been trained to use, that's the day you become dangerous to people who profit from your quiet. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying there won't be consequences. I lost a wedding, a fiancé, and the illusion that love was enough to protect me from people who saw me as a means to an end. But I kept my company, my dignity, my power. And that trade was worth it. If you've ever had to walk away from people who love the idea of you, but not the reality of you, type, "I walked away," in the comments. Or if you chose to stay and fight for your right to exist on your own terms, type, "I stayed and fought." Both are brave. Both are valid. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here.